When you're a beginner and you're learning about how to work with all of these little seed beads and your needle and thread, it's really hard to kind of keep everything from falling off the end of your thread sometimes, and you feel very fumbly. And I have a really great way for you to make sure that you feel comfortable that even if you scoof up a stitch, that the beads aren't going to go flying all off your table and down on the floor, and your dog is going to eat them, and it's all going to be a big mess, the way it happens in my house anyway. So let's talk about how you're going to use a stop bead. And it's a very simple little thing. It's a temporary bead that you're going to use. You're not going to weave it into your project, so you want to make sure that I like to use something that's completely different than the beads that I'm using in the project that I'm working on. The reason is that's a visual cue for me to make sure that I don't accidentally stitch into that bead, because once you've stitched into the bead as part of your project, guess what? It just became a part of your project, unless you rip the whole thing out. So using a completely different kind of bead is a good visual cue for me to remember that that's not one that I want to stitch into. Let me show you with the beads how you actually use this. This is what I'm talking about. Say I wanted to start a length of peyote here, and I was picking up, a certain number of beads. And let's say I bring them down on my thread, and I'm trying to take the next stitch, and I'm messing with it over here, and I'm doing this, and then all of a sudden, whoops, there my beads just fell off the tail end of my thread. Hate it when that happens. So here's how to keep that from happening. Here's my completely random bead that I just picked from a different project. I'm going to pass my needle through the bead, bring it down so that it's going to be, I like to leave a 4 to 6 inch tail below a stopper bead or below any project where I'm starting out, because I need that length of tail to be long enough that I can weave it back in and end it off later. If you end up bringing this way down here, so you've got just a little bit of a tail down here, you're going to be really sad, because it's going to be really difficult for you to weave that back into the beadwork to end this off. So this is bad. You always err on the side of too much tail, leaving too much tail rather than too little tail. Voice of experience here. Okay, so you just bring the stop bead down to your 4 to 6 inch point, and then you're going to take your needle and from that tail end go back up through that bead. What's going to happen when you do that is, look how I've got a length of thread showing right here on the outside of the bead. That's okay because this is temporary. Normally we would not want a thread to be showing on the outside of a bead, but we're going to just take this off later. That's a way of making it secure. You can control your tension a little bit with it, but yet you can still move this. And so like if I am holding both ends of this thread, I can adjust this up or down. I can move this around a little bit on me, which means that, let's say, now that I've got that stop bead on there, so now I've got my beads, and I bring them down. Now that is not coming off. Those beads will not accidentally work their way off. Let me show you the other thing that you can use your stopper bead for. Sometimes I call it stop bead, sometimes a stopper bead. But let's say, okay, so I take my first stitch of my whatever I'm doing here, and look how much space I have between the stopper bead and where the actual beads are. That's a bit of a problem, because now this is all going to be really loose. So what I can do is just take that stop bead, and I'm going to hold on to the tail end with my other hand. I'm going to cinch it up. So there we go. Now I've moved the stop bead up to where the beads are. Now that'll be nice and tight for me to be able to see better where I take my next stitch. So as a tension device, the stopper bead can be really useful too. Now, a stopper bead is not the only way to do this. There are some products on the market called, well, shoot, I can't even think what they're called, but they're little like spring clips. There's various brands of them out there. The reason I don't like to use those is because I always end up getting my thread caught up in those coils or the wire or whatever it is. So this is a much more effective way for me to do it. Now, some people love their little clips, and so if you're not one who gets your thread all caught up in those clips all the time, then go for it. You can use that. But this is the way to do it if you're one of those like me who's very fumbly and managed to get all sorts of tangles and knots going on. Really quick and easy tool for you to use. Makes your beading a lot happier. Happy beading.